In 1350, what we know as the idyllic French countryside was a living hell. For more than 15 years, the people had suffered at the hands of English invaders. Little did they know that this war would last for another 100 years. But through this crucible of fighting, famine and plague, there would emerge the modern nation of France. England's King Edward III looked jealously across the English Channel. Wanting France for his own, he had added the fleur-de-lis, the symbol of France, to his own royal standard. This was an all-out declaration of war. And in 1337, he invaded. But France already had a king, Philippe VI. As the English burned their way across the land, Philippe's army and his legendary knights marched to meet them, and came face to face with the English longbow. A simple weapon, but the most devastating the knights had ever faced. The heroes of France fell to storms of English arrows. The war engulfed the French countryside. By 1351, the conflict was focused on Brittany. One fight stands out as a spectacular display of chivalry, and a symbol of the wider conflict between the two enemy nations. The Combat of the 30 is still commemorated here in Brittany. It was a dispute between two local families. Supported by the opposing sides in the war, the French and English commanders decided to settle it through a trial of knightly combat. Each side would choose 30 champions to fight on neutral ground. France prepared to defend itself against England's finest. Intent on ending the suffering of the French peasantry, Sir Jean de Beaumanoir sent a challenge to the English commander. 30 champions on each side would compete in a tournament for final claim to Brittany. With the battleground of the halfway oak agreed upon, Sir Jean set out to gather support from local knights. As a knight himself, Sir Jean followed the strict rules of chivalry and was expected to protect the local peasantry and ensure peace.
Mon arway maigne avec moi. Je ride au vos volets. Page. Retrayez vos à moi. Avertissez votre courage, compagnon. Incontinent.
Most medieval tournaments were friendly in nature, held for sport and glory, but the combat of the 30 was arranged between opponents mired in war. English raids had torn through the countryside of Brittany and brought great hardship to the people. Sir Jean spotted an English raiding party attacking a nearby farmstead.
Bien savez quoi? Je suis votre serveuse. Monte les avoués. Quand je commande, avance!
The French knights defeated the English raiders, and Sir Guy de Rochefort joined Sir Jean's party.
Je suis votre serveuse.
Sir Jean's search next brought him to Sir Geoffroy Dubois, whose squires were contending with a detachment of English longbowmen. The knights would use the great speed of their war horses to charge the archers and overwhelm them. The English longbowmen fell, but the French knights knew the enemy would attempt to retake the hilltop fortification and steeled themselves for further attacks.
Avant, compagnon. Incontinent. Avertissez votre courage, compagnon. Quand je commande, avant.
Looking to secure his honor, a young knight held his ground on a bridge in Sir Jean's path. Honorably conceding defeat in the duel, Sir Yves Charel joined the cause.
Avant, compagnon. Retrayez vos à moi. Avertissez votre courage, compagnon. Si comme vos voldrez.
Sir Jean entered the staging area for the tournament, where he prepared to choose which knights would join him in battle. Each knight would be accompanied by his squires, young nobles in training to become knights themselves.
Balance prest.
Accesmet avant, compagnon. Donnez-moi votre service. Je ris dans vos volets. Certes. Incontinent.
Sir Jean had selected his champions. As the sun rose, the two sides entered the arena, ready for the first round of combat.
Regnetz vos armes.
Claiming an easy victory in the first round, the French champions left the arena to recover their strength.
En avoué. Mettons nos en avoué. Bien savets quoque nos advienne. Aveillez votre. Vec si fais vos commandements.
Refreshed and reinvigorated, the French knights returned to the arena for another round of combat. The combat of the 30 was about to decide which nation would control the Duchy of Brittany. Triumphant, Sir Jean de Beaumanoir and his loyal knights claimed victory. The combat of the 30 had decided control of Brittany in favor of the French. Little did the two sides know, this was just the beginning of a bitter war that would outlive them all. After victory at the combat of the 30, the French faced devastating raids from England's Black Prince. But France's King John II was closing in. Jean finally caught the English near the city of Poitiers in September 1356. The French army outnumbered the English by thousands. King Jean himself joined the fight, but what seemed a certain victory for France soon turned into a nightmare. The English longbow devastated the mighty French army. An endless hail of arrows gutted the main French force. Then the English captured King Jean. The fight was over. The Battle of Poitiers was another catastrophic defeat for the French. The English had destroyed most of France's nobility in a single day. Now they turned their attention towards taking the French capital, Paris. The invaders marched unopposed towards Paris. The remains of some of the medieval walls of Paris still stand today. As the English army approached, the terrified locals sought shelter behind these defenses. Could France's capital withstand the full might of the Black Prince's army? The English Black Prince had raided the French countryside without mercy. And now his army had come for the capital. With the English on their doorstep, it fell to the French army and the people of Paris to defend the walls of their proud city. Hoping to avoid open battle, the French began fortifying the city, manning the walls and calling every available soldier to his post. As the French hastened their preparations, several detachments of English soldiers were spotted closing in on the city. Having struck out at the English front line, the French had slowed the enemy's advance.
Die Chevolschers Givoués de Sester. Die Chevolschers sunt prests. Nos allons, Chevolschers.
Mais ici, laisse comme un de marche. Je gagne mon gage. Sur quoi me faut-il traire?
De l'estrier, à votre sens.
On me laisse archère.
Les destrières sont prestes.
Épuise avant.
Oyez ça, compagnon.
Chevolschers, soyez prêts. Mai et mon destrier sont prêts. Compagnon, Sigrid Smoué, comme
Access Wand, je commande, avant.
soyez prêts, si comme vos
La vente à plus de personnes.
Il n'est pas
Compagnons, restons sans votre service. L'heure,
votre yetz pose à moi.
attendez,
Ici, Nova.
avant, compagnons.
Les Chevolschers, expliquez
C'est strict son de l'ennemi.
Access Metzvos.
Compagnon, nous allons.
Ah oui, mais je tire de moi.
L'heure est avertissez votre courage, compagnons.
Soyez avertissez votre courage, compagnons.
Wand, je commande, avant.
Besoin. Suisse envoyé.
Pour me faut trahir, il trahit sans nul arrest.
Coréour, preste, c'est vos commandements. Que faut-il donc l'ordre servi? Attendez les commandes. Des guerres puissantes, Vanance. Oyez les ordonnances. Allons, ça tresse tous. Advertens, tous lors devant snors, homme faut train, à votre commandement.
Des ennemis est à trouver!
L'ennemi d'Assarchi.
En action, chevalier.
Peignes, avions-moi. Attendez.
Votre jetzt vos à moi.
Acces Bedford, je suis votre père.
Avertissez votre courage, compagnon.
Attendez, les
Ennemi
Reste tous avant.
compagnon.
Cheval-char. En pleine course.
Announce! Si, comme volette.
Oh jetzt, tous le monde. Marche arrière, moi.
Reste pour la besoin. Announce, noce de vente salaire.
Oh jetzt, tous le monde. Lors devant Snors, alerte.
Les ennemis sont
Va jetzt, moi, si, comme volets.
Si comme votre André. Reste tous avant.
Alarson, cesse le temps d'adventure, mes seigneurs.
Besoin à faire? Oi, si toast.
Votre jetzt vos à moi. Il nous a chié. Chevalier, reste pour Afghan. Acces vos, compagnon, si comme vos voldrez.
Alors, zone suisse, en sus, dans des prières.
Soyez prest, compagnon.
Les autres, laissent commandement.
Votre jetzt vos à moi. Pour votre service. Acces vos, de commande, avant. Je suis votre serveuse. Apertisez votre courage, compagnon. Soyez prest, compagnon. Avant, compagnon. Attendez, incontinent. Retrayez vos amouets. L'heure est de besoigner. Je suis votre serveuse.
The English showed no mercy, burning their way to Paris via 3 routes, each of which was home to villages and farms that supplied the capital.
Attendez les commandements. Incontinent. L'heure est quand je commande, avance. À la somme, chevalier, je suis votre serveuse. Avertissez votre courage, compagnon. Voyez si comme vos adresses. Access vos, compagnon. Avertissez votre courage, compagnon. Quand je commande, avance. L'heure est de besoigner.
Rien ne faut qu'un pic.
Access vos, avance, compagnon. Soyez prêts pour votre service.
As the French continued to rally their army, the English took the last of the surrounding villages and had almost encircled Paris.
Access vos, retrayez vos amouets. Attendez, avertissez votre courage, compagnon.
En besoin.
With the countryside in flames and the English at the city gates, the French armies steeled themselves for battle. Now came the capital's true test, with the mighty walls of Paris hold against a fearsome English siege.
Attendez, certes.
The Parisian guard raised the alarm as the English began their first assault on the city walls. The French army fought valiantly, repelling the first English attack.
Soyez prêts, compagnons. Chevalier, prête pour asker. Bande, je commande, avant. L'heure est de votre service. Soyez prêts, quand votre yetz pose à moi.
Soyez obéis à votre commandement.
L'heure est de avant. Attendez les commandements incontinent.
Die Chevaucheurs s'obtempèrent à vos services.
Accespez vos compagnons. Avertissez votre courage, compagnons.
Pex, j'ai besoin.
L'heure est de besoin. Votre yetz pose à moi.
Pex, jeunesse Lidieur. Ainsi souhaité. J'obtempère à vos services.
Accespez vos compagnons. Avant, compagnons.
Ici les commandements des Spartans. Voyez mal. Compagnons. Ici les commandements. Oui, à part main. Chessmets vos
Soyez prêts, compagnons.
Il n'y faut que Chevaucheurs, on arrange par la voie.
Attendez les commandements. Sommes en ordonnance. Attendez les je suis votre serveur.
Ainsi novel si obéis à votre commandement.
Accespez vos compagnons. Soyez ici comme vous voudrez. Obéissez votre service.
Oyez bien, ça, compagnon.
L'heure est avertissez votre...
Ici les compagnons, aux allons. S'y veille. Déchirez le commandement. Chessmets vos habillements. Annonce. À part oui. Chessmets vos s'y veille. Compagnons.
Compagnons, régnez les avions moins.
L'heure en votre service.
Des Hanamis, aides à trouver.
Chevalier, votre yetz vos à moi.
Alors, ça va bien.
Soyez prêts, compagnons. Votre yetz vos à moi.
Il n'y faut que jouer de cette terre.
Contre l'ennemi. À l'arson, chevalier. Bande, je commande, avant.
Les autres, les avant à mon commandement.
Access avertissez votre courage, compagnons.
The French defense of their capital held firm, wearing down the English invaders one by one.
Sommes en ordonnance. L'heure est...
Chevaucheurs, soyez prêts. J'ai besoin.
Acton incontinent. Votre yetz vos à moi. Chevalier, redet en bon ordre. À l'arson, chevalier. Avant. mes seigneurs. Voyez Brest, compagnon.
Sieste, Viquidor!
Je suis votre servus.
Desconfites l'ennemi!
Donetsk incontinent.
Access, oui, apparemment.
Il n'y faut s'y obéir à votre commandement.
Oyez nos des Spartans.
Chevalier, je commande!
Access compagnon. Ordre.
Tres tous sommes Brest. À l'arson, chevalier. Cesse le temps d'adventière, mes seigneurs.
Oui, l'ennemi!
À l'arson, chevalier. Avant, mes seigneurs. Je suis votre serveuse. Chevalier, Brest entier. Les chevaliers, c'est comme votre et pour vous! Acton certes.
Oui, l'ennemi!
Access Besmont. Nos des Spartans. Oui.
Voyez Brest, quand je commande. Access, je suis votre serveur. Incontinent.
Voyagerid incontinent.
Attendez les commandements.
Porteur! Le frère est mort!
Ennemi, point de foyer!
Archier suisse!
La mortableuse de Versnos!
L'ennemi nos archis!
Ennemi, aide à trouver!
L'heure est de besoigner. Pour votre service. Service en ordonnance.
Chevalcheur! Soyez...
Compagnon. Voyez avant. Compagnon. Access Mexican vos voldrez. Apertisez vostre courage. Compagnon. Retrayez vos aboués. Si attendons. Access Mecertes.
Archier suisse!
Ennemi, point de foyer!
Augenenken. Access Besmont.
L'ennemi nos archis!
Compagnon! Voyez, messieurs, avions voué, compagnon!
Sommes en ordonnance. Ridets en bon. Soyez Brest. Compagnon. Incontinent. Reste tous sommes Brest. Apertisez votre courage. Compagnon. Attendez. Avant. L'heure est de besoigner. Certes.
Ces stricts sont de l'ennemi!
Et nos archives. Donnez-moi vos advites. Je cours dessus. Ouais. Girid.
Ennemi, point de foyer!
Boss Oberleström. Allons, ça part mail.
Suspensfort, compagnon. Wand, je commande. Avant.
Oui, l'ennemi!
Oberleström, appointed boss.
L'ennemi Nasarchi!
Que faut-il donc?
Advertance, tout le monde. Veille à la mine. Besoin n'y a fait. Oyez les ordonnances.
Besoin n'y a fait. Attendez les commandements, manants.
Archier suisse!
Oil, messieurs.
Oyez les ordonnances.
The enemy grew ever more desperate as their ranks thinned and their hopes of victory faded.
Baillez moins besoin.
Des ennemis! Aide à trouver!
Oil, messieurs des mouets. Oh, me faut trahir. Lors batige s'essuie.
Les ennemis sont
Manueras lui. Belle œuvre.
Ennemi point poignet!
ennemis marchés!
Advertance, tout le monde. Oi, mestière des mouets. Vecchière, mais...
Besoin n'y a fait.
Reste ennemis!
L'ennemi!
Oyez tout le monde. Je vous amène mes rien.
Oui, l'ennemi! Ennemi point poignet!
Ich intelligent marché!
Des ennemis! Aide à trouver!
Reste l'ennemi!
Ennemi point poignet!
Baillez moins
Oui,
besoin.
l'ennemi!
Ennemis marché! Intelligent marché! Je strict sont de l'ennemi! Intelligent marché!
Des ennemis! Aide à trouver!
Attendez les...
Compagnon, comme il vous plaise.
Oui, l'ennemi!
L'heure est de besoigner. Avertissez votre coron.
Reste l'ennemi! La lance de Versos! Ennemis marché! Reste l'ennemi!
Ennemi point poignet! Des ennemis! Aide à trouver! Ennemis! Aide à trouver!
Ennemis marché! marchez! Ennemis, marchez! Respecte le sens de l'ennemi!
Die Chevaucheurs sind fest! Chevaucheurs, à pleine course! Piquets, Rosarouet!
Des Hanamis, Edge approuvé!
En assaut jusqu'au filet!
À plus de Vernos!
Oui, Hanamis!
C'est glorieux! Ennemis, marchez! Respecte le sens de l'ennemi!
Remonte les alliés! Compagnons! Tempest!
Defeated and demoralized by the strength of the French defense, the Black Prince's army abandoned their siege of the capital. Paris celebrated victory, but this was not the last test the French would face in their struggle to win the war. The walls of Paris held out against the English onslaught. England's King Edward and the Black Prince abandoned the siege. They marched towards Chartres to try their luck at conquering a less formidable target. But before they could attack, a violent storm hit the army. Killing 1,000 English soldiers in a tempest of hail and freezing winds. To Edward, this Black Monday disaster seemed like divine retribution. A sign that it was time to stop waging war and make peace with France's King Jean. But even as peace between kings was reached, the people of France were still living in bloodshed and turmoil. Between 1358 and 1370, France was in chaos. Peasant uprisings, rampaging bands of mercenaries, and civil war ravaged the country. Peasants rose in rebellion, killing their lords and wreaking havoc. Mercenary bands also roamed the land. Known as routiers, they had once been hired by the English to fight against the French, but were cut loose when peace was reached. They systematically ravaged and pillaged towns across France. And with King Jean prisoner in England, his son Charles the Dauphin faced homegrown attacks on his rule by powerful French lords, beset from all sides. The Dauphin's forces had to regain control over their own country. Having only recently been crowned King of France, Charles V dispatched his army to the French-held village of Évreux to forge order from chaos. From here, the army would move to extinguish three major threats: bands of roving mercenaries harrying the countryside, a peasant uprising, and attacks from a rival for the French crown, Charles of Navarre. The French army would start by reclaiming the rebel-held villages of Cocherel, Jouy, and Croissy.
Mais vado laborar, parats pour laborar. Felice et beat. Ci sommes. Escolte bene. Io ma sono la cosa.
Parade pour venir. Cos'è sarà massonata? Buon lavoro! Parate!
Audite, militaires! Facile, cavalier! Facem move! Parate, point d'antenne. Obéir. Espero tu manda. Audite! Ordine tenens!
As the French army struggled to regain control of the countryside, they were struck by a band of English routiers. These mercenaries had been cut loose by the English army and were plundering the countryside in order to make a living. In taking the village of Jouy, the French army was closer to stemming the peasant rebellion and regaining control. The French forces eliminated the routier attack, but more were still raiding the countryside in search of provisions and riches. The routier demanded payment from the French, or they would continue their horrifying raids. The French paid off the routier and were free of further raids. The village of Croissy, rich in gold deposits, was a crucial town for the French to reclaim. The central monastery town of Cocherel would continue to send out rebel attack parties to weaken the French army. The French army defeated the rebels at Croissy and took control of the gold-rich village. The central monastery town of Cocherel was still under the control of rebel peasants. The French army would have to take it before they could launch an assault on Charles of Navarre.
Parade pour venir. Toutes audite. Io ma sono e ci rimandamento.
S'ils sont quel Ercipois? Va de la bourra.
Mandesqued? Seco materia. Parats pour laborar. Vado laborar.
Qued me? Sì, cavo.
Attention, novos ordines. Orchestre. Dormez bien. Facile, cavalier.
Qued labour? Sito. Sagita in arco. Bene, bene. Sagita in arco. Artière in avant.
Les personnes sont ici!
Cavalarios, quitamos. El líder es fácil, caballero.
The French army took control of the rebel villages, and the peasant uprising was subdued. But to keep control over the region, they would need to defend its center of influence, the monastery at Cocherel. Northeast of Cocherel, Charles of Navarre's army had established a fortified camp. The King of Navarre sought to make himself ruler of France as well. He intended to press his claim by destroying the newly arrived royal forces.
Advertence, messieurs. Moi exploité. Bien de plates à une chance.
Attendez les commandements.
Chevaucheurs, soyez miquets vos arroues.
Reste suisse de vos servir.
Homme fautrail. Dos dialores. Ça est bel manuer. Bayets mue besoigne. Lors battige s'estu.
Pushing up the hillside, the French discovered Charles of Navarre's camp. His front line had the high ground and was made up entirely of archers. The French would have to think carefully about how to approach the stronghold.
Restus samsprest. Ridets en matordre. Avancez, seigneur.
French army had repelled Charles of Navarre, stemmed the revolt, and held back the raids of the Routiers. In the struggle for control over France's lands, the king still clung to power. With rebels and raiders eliminated at Cocherel, King Charles V faced one last threat to France: the relentless English invaders. Word arrived that the English army was weak and scattered, divided by infighting. The king quickly directed his army to chase down the old enemy of France at Pont-Valin. The French town of Pont-Valin lay directly in the path of marauding English soldiers on the hunt for loot. The town's only hope of survival lay with the French forces camped nearby. The French quickly prepared to ambush the disorganized English raiders and defend Pont-Valin from ruin.
Ascolti bene. Come sono le cose?
Ordines, colonnes sunt ici. Vado por mercare. Reflect.
The main English army thundered into the valley. They paused to rest beyond the town before launching their raid.
In avant. Si est. Bene, bene. Si somes. Si, comprendo. Vado da curare. Cos'è sarà massonata? Buon lavoro. Ah, Félicité. Mes flèches. Archia in arco. Quel me? Porco di Gafrox. Ordines. Negocio.
Vite, négocie.
Où est l'amour? Parade Porvenir. Io ma sono la causa.
Parade Porvenir.
Dans le milieu.
The first group of English raiders began their attacks on the outlying farms. After destroying the farms, they would attack the town of Pontvalin.
Est facile, cavalier. Bace, bove.
Arquère parade, parade. Arquère, in avant.
Attention, dans votre sens.
After a hard-won battle against a scattered enemy, the French succeeded in halting the English chevauchés at Pontvalin. The English army was not invincible. The French cause was not yet lost. The French won an overwhelming victory at the Battle of Pontvalin. It was the first time the English had been utterly defeated during the war. But the triumph was short-lived. As England spent the next 60 years amassing French territory through alliances and victories at great battles such as Agincourt. It seemed that nothing could stop England. Who then could have foreseen that a teenaged girl was about to change the course of history? In 1429, France was in dire straits. Nowhere was it more evident than the besieged city of Orléans. The city was completely surrounded by English-held forts. But just a few days' ride away, here in Chinon, there was potential help. The French royal prince, the Dauphin Charles, was holed up in his fortress and under pressure to ride out to save Orléans. As Charles hesitated, a young peasant girl arrived at his court. Her name was Jeanne d'Arc. She claimed to have received saintly visions, giving her a divine task to help Charles become king and drive the English out of France forever. Charles was skeptical, but was soon convinced of her divinity. And he charged this 17-year-old with the near impossible mission to liberate Orléans. To Jeanne, This was the first step in realizing her God-given destiny. In April 1429, she rode out from Chinon at the head of her army to confront the hated enemy of France. Surrounded by English strongholds, and with its last line of defense under attack, the city of Orléans grew ever more desperate. In France's darkest hour, 17-year-old Jeanne d'Arc arrived with the king's army to liberate a city and prevent the fall of a nation. The English had captured the vital fortification, known as Les Tourelles, on the south bank of the Loire. Orléans would live or die on its access to supplies. Recapturing Les Tourelles would be key to saving the city.
Seigneur, chevalier,
Ils se tiennent nos archives. Inconfident.
à la sorte, chevalier, il est cette bonne ordre. Reste tous comme reste. Cesse le temps d'attention, Seigneur.
Lors Batige s'essuie. Chevalier Bastille.
À l'arçon, chevalier. Avance, mes seigneurs. Attendez, les commandements. Je suis votre chef. Si comme votre ordre. Entrez vos aboués. Avant, compagnons. Soyez vaincus.
western fort destroyed, the French could safely cross the Loire River by this route.
Sommes en ordres tous à l'arson, chevalier. Je suis votre serveuse. À l'arson, chevalier. Acest va avertissems votre courage, compagnon. L'heure est de besoigner. Ridets en bon ordre.
Essentiel nos artines!
Waitement de vers l'ennemis, chevalier.
Having suffered under the English siege for months, Orléans had sent for crucial supplies, but English patrols threatened their arrival at the city. If Orléans hoped to receive the supplies, the French would have to clear the road of English raiders. The French eliminated the English raiders, granting the supply convoys safe passage into the city. Each time supplies approached Orléans, English raiders would return to guard the road, hoping to plunder the French goods. The French army torched the eastern English fort, securing a crossing to the south bank of the Loire River.
Je commande, avant. Si comme vos voldrez, je suis votre serveuse. Sommes ridets en bon ordre. C'est le temps de la frontière, messeigneurs.
The supply convoy arrived in the city, providing the French army with much-needed gold. Les Tourelles was the linchpin in the English siege of Orléans, blocking the main supply route to the city. If Jeanne d'Arc could capture it, Orléans would finally be liberated. The last obstacle to Les Tourelles fell to ruin. The king's army drove the hated enemy of France from Les Tourelles. With the main road to the city back in French hands, the English abandoned their long siege of Orléans. Celebrating a momentous victory at the head of the French army, Jeanne d'Arc would forever be remembered as the Maid of Orléans. Jeanne d'Arc had liberated Orléans and put the English army to flight. However, as the English retreated, they became an obstacle for Charles the Dauphin. He needed a clear path from Chinon to Reims, where he would be crowned king. Nearing the town of Patay, the English sought to regroup. But Jeanne d'Arc and her French army were closing in. Fleeing the Loire Valley, the English were on the run. As they retreated northwards, a French vanguard was in close pursuit.
Compagnon. Certes.
Caught out of position, the French faced a surprise attack from the English rearguard. A detachment of English archers blocked the road with palings, an effective measure against cavalry. The French vanguard had to clear the road if they were to call in reinforcements. With the road cleared, the French army could safely bring in reinforcements from nearby allies. The French army paid their ally and received a detachment of reinforcements.
L'heure est de... Soyez prest, compagnon. À la continent. Adjustments vos, compagnon. Attendez, je suis votre serveuse. Reste tous sommes prêts, si comme vos voldrez. Chevalier, au vostre service. Bande, je commande, avant.
Hearing the rallying cry of the English coming from the village of St. Sigmund, the French were alerted to the enemy position. The French recaptured St. Sigmund and prepared to rendezvous with Jeanne d'Arc. But a large English detachment had set up a blockade. So long as that force was in place, the French vanguard could not reach Jeanne.
Soyez prêts, au vostre service. Adjustments vos, comprendre, je commande, avant. Adjustments vos, compagnon. Essentiel positif. Soyez prêts, certes. Incontinent.
With the English blockade destroyed, the French vanguard rejoiced at the arrival of Jeanne d'Arc and her troops. With their rearguard eliminated, the remaining English forces would now seek to escape the valley through the town of Patay. 3 enemy regiments were converging on the town along 3 main roads. Jeanne had either to stop the regiments on the roads or race ahead to fortify Patay itself.
les commandements. Por vostre service. Apertisets vostre courage, compagnon. Sommes en ordre.
Soyez prêts. Belgique est à
Attendez les commandements.
Avant, compagnon.
Acceptez vos compagnons.
Présent. Bien ordonné.
After an intense pursuit and a hard-fought battle, the French crushed the remaining English army, thwarting their desperate retreat. Now the triumphant Jeanne d'Arc could safely lead Charles to Reims for his coronation as King of France. The Battle of Patay was a disaster for the English. The French wiped out their bowmen and drove their forces from the Loire Valley. Now for Jeanne d'Arc and the Dauphin, the way to Reims was clear. The Maid of Orleans rode with the Dauphin through the streets and was at his side when he was finally crowned King Charles VII of France. But less than 2 years later, Jeanne was captured in battle, sold to the English, and put on trial for heresy. She spent 6 months locked in a dungeon, awaiting her fate. King Charles, who owed his crown to Jeanne, did nothing to help win her freedom. She was found guilty. On May 30th, 1431, Jeanne d'Arc was brought here, to the old market square in Rouen, where she was burned at the stake. She was 19 years old. But what the Maid of Orleans started could not be denied. Her victories were the first in a chain of successes for France's military. Liberty was within reach. Thanks to the leadership of 2 brothers, Jean and Gaspard Bureau, the French army became experts in the use of artillery, transforming it into a disciplined, modern fighting force. In 1448, King Charles was ready to make a major move against the English. He vowed to retake Normandy. The Battle of Patay was a disaster for the English. The French wiped out their bowmen and drove their forces from the Loire Valley. Now for Jeanne d'Arc and the Dauphin, the way to Reims was clear. King Charles VII's army would soon have access to the most advanced artillery in Europe, thanks to the master gunners, the Bureau brothers. While the brothers developed their weapons, the king laid plans for their use. He would bring Normandy back under French control. The first phase of the king's plan would give the Bureau brothers time to perfect their cannons. He tasked his army with claiming a base of operations. With the town under French control, the Bureau brothers now had the use of the university and of their own siege workshop. Their next goal was to learn all they could about recent innovations in the mixing of the most potent gunpowder. While the army waited for their new weapons, they kept a watchful eye for any English attacks on the town.
Que faut-il donc besoigner? Giovanni Bastille. Longtemps va-t-il demeurer? Homme fautrail. Don stia Lores. Bonne besoin de fait.
Bien vos oeil. Where y vais-je?
Oi, mestière de moi. Lors batige s'estu. Besoin à faire? Manoir assouvi.
A party of English soldiers approached the French base, intent on reclaiming the town.
Paillettes moi besoigne. Giovanni Bastille.
The brothers worked tirelessly to cast their gun barrels, but they still needed insight into the latest gunpowder chemistry. The Bureau brothers had successfully combined a powerful gunpowder recipe with sturdy cast iron gun barrels. At last, cannon production could begin. While the brothers turned out their cannons, culverins, and riboldequins, the French army would bolster themselves for the coming fight.
J'attends les commandements et les batailles.
Je quai avant. Cuinez au butin. C'est un honneur. Les commandements viennent. Si le fait à toute tire. Un saint soit-il fait.
Arbalétrie, Corrège lancier.
Soudard, soyez prestes. Nous attendons vos commandes. JQ. J'obéis à votre avis.
Avez-vous commandement pour moi? Je me mets en l'avouer. Si fait, j'incontinue.
Nous allons avoir les commandements. Qu'ainsi il souhaite. Avant, un seul arrière-garde.
With the mine under French control, the Bureau brothers had access to an abundance of iron for their gun barrels.
Moult me plaît de fouiller en vos mines.
Nous attendons vos commandements. Ce sera pour moi honneur.
Point de repos pour les armes. Je m'attise d'Estrobine.
Oyez les commandements. Qui même aille après moi. Les traits de l'ennemi espace de la France attend. Nous attendons. Juste et un seul arrière-regarde. Je quitte votre avant un seul arrière-regarde. Reste zoom pour la bataille. Reste zoom pour la bataille. Nous allons avoir les commis.
With the skirmish won, trade could begin with the settlement.
Qu'ainsi il souhaite. Moult me plaît votre présence, compagnon.
Obéir est divine vertu. Si tel est votre bon plaisir.
Les commandements vieux. Oyez les commandements. Filez au butin. Nous sommes archiers de l'ennemi.
Qu'attendez-vous de moi?
Je prends cure de ce manoir.
Les soudards sont prestes pour Aatier. C'est l'heure de départir.
Soudard, Reiss ne clamez pas, avancerai pour faire les commandements. J'attends ma besogne prochaine.
Juste et notre cause, chevalier. Point de merci. C'est la mort. C'est à honneur. Nous allons avoir les... Avant, un saint l'arrière-garde.
Les Coustiniers en absence, Coustiniers.
Les commandements viennent.
J'obéirai. Je vais où est doué. Or donc m'incline à votre plaisir.
Ennemi d'anarchie!
Avez-vous commandement pour moi? Un hostel à bâtir. Dépêchez-moi.
Causez-vrai, combat, soudain.
J'attends vos advices.
Les commandements viennent. Oyez les commandements, Soudard. Avant. Fuyez au butin. Moult me plaît votre présence, compagnon. Qui mène arrière-moi. Sans merci. Ça soit-il fait. Indécidable comme une toile. Pour les mêmes juges. Nous allons avant. Un saint l'arrière-garde. Nous attendons vos commandements. Je prie de vous et nous attendons. Courage! Ouais, que ce soit-il fait. Et s'il le fait à toute tire. Qui même aille après moi. S'il le fait à toute tire. Ce sera pour moi honneur. Les traîtres de l'ennemi avancent au butin. Moult me plaît votre présence, compagnon. De l'ennemi. Nous allons avoir s'il le fait à toute tire. Nous attendons vos commandements. Juste et bravo! Un salon, c'est presque! Donnez ce commandement! Juste est notre cause! Moult me plaît votre présence, compagnon! Oyez les commandements, Soudard. Les commandements viennent. Fuyez au butin. Qui même aille après moi.
Vostre vous louez, la vouée de vertu veuille suivre.
Je quai votre advertence. Les commandements viennent.
Avez-vous... J'irai vous filtrer. Ce sera moult bien assouvi, verrez. Une œuvre bien assouvie. Qu'attendez-vous de moi? Ce sera moult bien assouvi, verrez. Très bonne maîtrise de la suite pour vos équies. Cheveux et artis.
Soudain, fait, soyez attentifs.
Ma lance est preste. Donnez commandement. Juste est notre cause. Le champ nous attend.
Tout suit à votre plaisir.
L'ennemi nous a
Nous attendons les commandements. Si sera prêt.
Sous pour la bataille.
Point de repos pour les hardis.
Causez-vous. Oui. Fait, soudain.
Nous sommes archers de l'ennemi.
Fait, compagnon.
At last, the French artillery weapons were ready for deployment. After years of preparation, the time had come for Charles VII to make his move. To take back Normandy, he would need to recapture the stronghold of Rouen, a critical fortress from which the English had been attacking Paris. Rouen walls would face an explosive trial against the mighty force of gunpowder. After raising the river port, the French soldiers seized a stockpile of shipworthy timber, which could be used for superior cannon frames. The brothers now had every available advantage in producing their guns.
Nous allons avoir les commandements. Un saint soit-il fait. Ce sera pour moi honneur.
Les engins de siège sont... Nous accomplissons vos ordonnances.
Les commandements avant. Un saint l'arrière-garde. Je tire votre advertence. Nous attendons vos commandements. Compagnons, votre commandement. Je tire votre advertance.
Soudain, avant, et sans mêler. S'il y a bien moule.
Prêt, sous pour la bataille. Roi de merci. Nous sommes archers de l'ennemi. Nous les mettrons juste. Un saint soit-il fait.
Causez-vous. J'œille et j'obtempère.
Obéir est divine vertu. J'enjambe la vouée de vertu. Jacques...
Soudain, ça. Guerre désgâte les choses.
Nous allons avoir les... Qui même aille après moi. Oyez avant. Cuidez au butin. Si le fait à tout tir. Je parfondrai nos saladiers. Un seul arrière-garde. Pour le corps de la victoire. C'est mort. Juste
est ordonné.
Les engins se meurent.
Les commandements moult me plaît votre présence, compagnons. Le champ lui-même aille après moi. Je parle des ennemis. Ce sera pour moi le sens de bataille.
The French army bore down on the formidable walls of Rouen, ready to launch their final assault on this key English stronghold.
Tout est ordonné.
Nous allons avoir les commandements.
Rouen walls were breached. The French army had at last exposed the heart of the fortress. Having lost the walls of Rouen, the English made a last stand to hold the city. The French would need to destroy the buildings that had housed the English army and drive out the enemy for good.
Je vais être doué.
With the English scattered and their buildings in ashes, the French had recaptured the critical fortress of Rouen. Charles VII had proven that France was no longer the underdog in the 100 Years' War. After decades of bloody dispute, Normandy was finally back in French hands. Thanks to the explosive force of cannon fire, the French were close to victory in this century-long war. But in a final grasp at power, the English dispatched a fresh army, equipped with their tried and tested longbows. Formigny would be a trial of old versus new, to determine the fate of France. Thanks to the explosive force of Thanks to the explosive force of cannon fire, the French were close to victory in this century-long war. English commander Sir Thomas Kyriel sent a large expedition to crush the French in Normandy. The village of Carentan was directly in their path. Massively outnumbered, the French skirmishers near Carentan would give their lives to weaken the English.
Je fais ce tir à votre obéissance.
Envoyez-moi à la bataille.
Soudard, soyez en aguette. Un méchant gambiment. Je ferai votre commandement. Allons pour un méchant gambiment. Un continent aurait des commandements. Nos Espartons portent en piment. C'est cette ordonnance bien à faire. Je veille à vos ordonnances. J'oxyrai ceux qui défailleront. Soudard, j'oxyrai ceux qui défailleront. Nos Espartons portent en piment. Un continent aurait des commandements. Soudard, soyez en aguette.
Though they fought bravely, the French skirmishers could only slow the English advance. The main body of the French army finally arrived in the river valley. The French now needed to locate and destroy the English army. But they would face a well-entrenched enemy with several local garrisons.
Allons plus que le pas.
The French destroyed the garrison at Briquebec.
Allons plus que le pas. Dieu vous avouez. tous en Mesnie. Je vais devant, brisez derrière.
French forces found a detachment of the English army attacking the town of Vallon. If they could stop the attack, they might gain valuable resources. With the English attack on Valognes halted, the citizens moved to support the French army.
Un peu d'avisement, soudard.
Ainsi soit fait. Poste prestige est bien clair. Nous allons avoir les copains pour les commandements. Voyez bien le commandement, soudard. Voyez bien, je vais devant, brisez derrière. Délaissons ces spuilieux. Tiens vos avoués. Si sera fait selon votre commandement. Je fais votre commandement. Allons plus que le pas. En avant, reste tous en Mesnie. Allons plus que le pas. Je vais devant, brisez derrière. Tiens vos amoués. Ainsi soit fait. Je fais votre commandement. Votre estime est bien claire. Je suis un chien. Nous délaissons ce spuilieux. Je rame de la mort et le temps. Si ça m'appelle selon votre commandement, je mourrai sans estimer. Je fais votre commandement. C'est bon, Samuel.
The English base at Saint-Sauveur fell to the French forces, but the enemy army was still at large.
Si sera fait selon votre commandement. Si sera fait selon votre commandement. Délaissons ces spuilieux. Tiens vos amoués. Votre estime est bien claire. Si sera fait selon votre commandement. Ainsi soit fait. Je vais devant, brisez derrière. En avant, reste tous en Mesnie. derrière.
Fiez-vous à moi. Je fais votre commandement.
En absent, Coustilier. Nous attendons les Coustiliers, en ordonnance. Nous allons. Ainsi soit fait. Coustilier, nous allons. Voyez bien.
The French forces located Kyriel's English army at a river crossing near the town of Formigny.
Votre ennemi est bien clair. Je fais votre commandement.
Several of the Bureau brothers' heavy guns and other forces arrived to help.
Tout est ordonné. Ainsi soit-il.
Les Coustiliers sont prêts. Le destrier ainsi soit.
Even with their cannons, the French faced the difficult task of engaging the well-positioned English army.
Soudard, veille son rastier, il nous faut marcher.
L'ennemi nous prend en
En bas l'étrier, trayez bas. En bas l'étrier, avant.
Les engins de siège sont prêts.
Nous attendons les commandements. À l'arçon, je fais votre commandement. Piquez des deux. Thiévaux à moi. En arçon, Coustilier. Chapelez-les, Coustilier.
Je suis un chien. Incroyable pour moi. Goûtez le tournant.
Si ça rappelle selon votre commandement. Vas-y, soit fait. Votre stress dit est bien clair. Coustilier, nous allons. Coustilier, en ordonnance. Nous allons. Piquez des deux. Qui sera fait selon votre commandement. Est bien clair.
Nos ordonnances sont la sus. C'est quasi assouvi.
Les Coustiliers sont prêts. En arçon, Coustilier. Coustilier, en ordonnance. Nous allons. Thiévaux à moi. Si sera fait selon votre commandement. Piquez des deux. Coustilier, nous allons. Coustilier, en ordonnance. Nous allons. Piquez des deux. En arçon, Coustilier. Coustilier, nous allons. Ainsi soit fait. En arceau, Coustilier. Je fais votre commandement. Houstiliers, en ordonnance. Nos allons. Piquez des deux. Houstiliers, nos allons. Ainsi soit fait.
Soyez prestes. Allons nous dérouiller les gants.
Ben, soudain, ne clamez pas, avancez.
Nos destriers, houstiliers, en ordonnance. Nos allons. Houstiliers, nos allons. Fiez vos amoués. Piquez des deux. En arceau, houstiliers. Ainsi soit fait. Houstiliers, en ordonnance. Nos allons.
Causez-vous. Oyez les commandements. Avant et sans mêler. Ça, guerre désgâte les choses. Ben, compagnons, si les commandements, je fais comme il vous plaise.
Nous attendons les commandements. En arceau, houstiliers. Piquez des deux. Houstiliers, en ordonnance. Nos allons. Houstiliers, nos allons. Houstiliers, nos allons. En arceau, houstilier.
Soyez coués. 6 hommes soldés pour besoigner. J'y ai cure. Envoyez vers la gloire.
À l'arceau, prêche pour les commandements. Houstiliers, en ordonnance. Nos allons.
J'attends les commandements et le j'y ai cure.
Nous allons plus que le pas. Oyez bien, à l'arceau. Votre stress dite est bien clair. Si sera fait selon votre commandement. Bonne aventure, houstilier. Avant.
Ben, soudain, ben, si les commandements.
Nos destriers rongent leurs freins. Des coups de canon de la sonde de roquetier. Houstilier, en ordonnance. Nous allons. Je fais votre commandement. Piquez des deux. Houstiliers, en ordonnance. Nous allons. À plein cours, foutez le courant. Je m'en fieris de la victoire. Si sera fait selon votre commandement.
Joy, quel est votre plaisir?
me plaise
Voyez bien les commandements, Souda. Je fais votre commandement. Prêt pour les commandiers, vos amoués. À vous attendre si sera fait selon votre commandement. Je fais votre commandement. Piquez des deux. En arceau, coustilier. Coustilier, nous allons. Coustilier, en ordonnance. Nous allons. Piquez des deux.
Envoyez-moi à la bataille. Où vous les créez pour... Je fais votre commandement.
Les coustiliers sont prêts.
Souda, ne clamez pas, avancez. Forestier, il nous faut marcher. Ça, guerre désgâte les choses.
Les coustiliers sont prêts. Votre esdite est bien claire. En arceau, coustilier. Ainsi soit fait.
Ben, Souda, fais ici les commandements. Causez-vous. Oyez,
Frères, maintenant, faut-il à...
Joy et j'obtempère.
À l'arceau, presse pour coustilier. Nous allons. Votre esdite est bien claire. Coustilier, nous allons. En arceau, coustilier. Piquez des deux. Coustilier, en ordonnance. Nous allons. Coustilier, nous allons. Tiens vos Samuel. Coustilier, en ordonnance. Nous allons. Je fais votre commandement. Ainsi soit fait. Si sera fait selon votre commandement. Piquez des deux.
Ben, compagnons, avant et sans mêler. J'y pourvois. Ça, guerre désgâte les choses.
Nos destriers rongent leurs freins. En arceau, coustilier.
Souda, fais ici, j'y pourvois tout à tir.
Où dois-je traire ce carrel? Soyez prestes pour les commandes, c'est comme vous voulez.
Ben, Souda, fais ici. Forestier, il nous faut marcher. Souda, fais ici, ne clamez pas, avancez.
Tout suit à votre plaisir. La voie de vertu veuille suivre.
Ben, compagnons, si les commandements. Avant et sans mêler. Je fais votre commandement. Arbalétrier.
Voyons les commandements qui nous adviennent.
Avant et sans mêler.
Nous attendons les commandements. Votre esdite est bien claire. Si sera fait selon votre commandement. En arceau, coustilier. Ainsi soit fait. Je fais votre commandement. Piquez des deux. Dievos, Samoué. Coustilier, en ordonnance. Nous allons. Je fais votre commandement. Votre esdite est bien claire.
Engin de siège assis. Ferraille, lancier. Assez. Ma lance est vent.
Causez-vous. Oyez les...
The French received word that their Breton allies had arrived with their knights and horsemen. Now the two armies could coordinate.
Envouez, chevalier. Envouez vers la victoire, mes seigneurs. Chevalier, envoie pour la gloire.
Nos destriers ROG.
Votre vouloir guidera mon... Causez-vous.
Soyez coués.
Soudard. Obéir et dit...
Prest sum pour la bataille. Chevalier en ordre.